movements mobilize nationwide while the general strike advances, demanding a constituent assembly and the freedom of former President Pedro Castillo. During a meeting in Sao Paulo, Brazilian President-elect Luis Inácio Lula da Silva spoke in favor of homeless people and committed to dignify their lives. And on Thursday, European Union leaders gathered in Brussels to hold their last meeting this year. The energy crisis, the conflict in Ukraine, and the search for a solution to their market problems will be at the center of the debate. Hello and welcome to teleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito in Ecuador. This is from the south. This Thursday, social movements mobilized at national level in Peru while the general strike advances, demanding a constituent assembly and the freedom of former President Pedro Castillo. Despite the fact that the Peruvian government declared a state of emergency for 30 days in the country, the mobilization organizers invited the citizens to join the protests. Also, those promoting the national strike indicated they expect massive demonstrations in the regions of La Libertad, Arequipa, Lima, Cusco, and Cajamarca. Since his imprisonment, sectors of the Peruvian society have moved to express their support for Castillo and demanded his release. And popular demonstrations have been confronted by the public forces. In the city of Andahuaylas, department of Apurimac, police repression has cost the lives of at least 8 demonstrators in the region. The protesters are demanding the resignation of President Boluarte and the advance of the general elections. And there were also popular demonstrations in Cusco demanding immediate elections. Peasant communities and other social movements took to the streets to reject the proposal to wait for more than 1 year to call elections. And a group of demonstrators in Ayacucho protested peacefully in the main square of Huamanga, also demanding the resignation of Boluarte and the call for new elections. Several social movements present at the rally agreed on the need for justice in order to preserve peace in the country. In the meantime, hearing against former Peruvian President Pedro Castillo continued. The public prosecutor's office has requested an 18-month pretrial imprisonment for Castillo and for his former Prime Minister Aníbal Torres for alleged rebellion crimes. In their request, the prosecution suggested Castillo should be sentenced to at least 10 years in prison for allegedly perpetrating a coup d'etat. Brazilian President-elect Luis Inácio Lula da Silva pledged to improve the life quality of homeless. The President-elect of Brazil made the statement during a meeting with the National Movement of Recyclable Material Collectors in the city of Sao Paulo. The next head of state of Brazil affirmed that in the past years, the people affected by extreme poverty have been disrespected.
My commitment is that we give a decent life to the homeless people who live abandoned as if they were animals in the viaducts of Sao Paulo, under the bridges. Now they are putting stones, placing obstacles, even placing iron objects, so that there is no space for you to sleep. It's not that they don't care. They don't even want you to have a right to sleep under a bridge. There is no humanist sense. No sense of passion, love, understanding for how you live in this country.
Colombia's President Gustavo Petro confirmed Thursday a 16% minimum wage increase by 2023. The new minimum wage will total 1,160 Colombian pesos plus a transportation allowance equivalent to $272. The decision was announced after a meeting between the Colombian head of state with representatives of businessmen unions and the Minister of Labor, Gloria Inés Ramírez.
This statement for the press has to do with the fact that businessmen and workers have reached an agreement, and obviously the national government supports it regarding Colombia's minimum wage. The minimum wage will increase by 16%, amounting 1,160,000 pesos. The transportation subsidy will increase by 20%, resulting in 140,000 pesos, for a total of 1,300,000 pesos.
We're taking our first break now. Join us again after this. And also don't forget to follow us on our TikTok account at teleSUR English for more. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. On Wednesday, El Salvador's Legislative Assembly approved by a large majority the 9th extension of the emergency regime in force in the country since March 27th, with the addition of 2 new criminal offenses. The decree passed with 67 votes in favor, 6 against, and 9 abstentions, despite strong criticism from international human rights organizations. Security sources stated that out of over 60,000 people detained, some 2,100 were released, as no relation to the maras or gangs had been proven. In Argentina, leaders of Everyone's Front called for a protest to demand a political trial against the Minister of Security of Buenos Aires and the District Attorney General for their participation in the trip to Lake Escondido. Buenos Aires City's Everyone's Front called on Thursday to mobilize, demanding a political trial against the local Minister of Security, Marcelo de Alessandro, and the Attorney General, Juan Bautista Maíquez, after chat leaks showed conversations between judges, planning executives, and a former intelligence agent involved in the case. On Thursday, the United States activated a new military command in South Korean territory amid tensions with China within the region. The new space base located in Pyeongtaek is the 3rd one installed outside U.S. territory, and several high-ranking military commanders attended the inauguration ceremony. The premise given for the need of this new facility is the monitoring of North Korea's military activities and the defense of the host country. On Thursday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov warned that if the United States confirms to deliver sophisticated air defense missiles to Ukraine, it would mark yet another provocation that could prompt a response from Moscow. Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said that the U.S. has become a party to the conflict in Ukraine following reports that the American country intended to provide Kiev with Patriot air surface-to-air missiles. Zakharova added that the increased transfer of such sophisticated weapons would mean greater involvement in military personnel and hostilities and could have consequences.
Washington has effectively become a party to the conflict on a practical level, given the growing amounts of direct U.S. military assistance, including the presence of U.S. servicemen on the ground. The transfer of such sophisticated weapons requiring months of training would mean even broader involvement of U.S. military personnel in the hostilities and could entail possible consequences.
The Russian spokeswoman warned that any weapons supplied by the United States or other countries to Ukraine will be a target to be destroyed by the Russian armed forces.
We strongly advise those who make decisions in Washington to finally listen, perhaps not to us, but to themselves, and draw the right conclusion from our repeated warnings that any weapons system supplied to Ukraine, including the Patriot, along with the personnel service in them, are and will remain legitimate priority goals for the Russian armed forces.
The European Parliament announced that it is investigating the agreement with Qatar in the wake of the corruption scandal affecting the organization. The President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, assured that any kind of pressure or undue influence exerted will be investigated. Metsola promised to carry out radical reforms in the coming months to put an end to corruption and influence peddling in the Parliament.
As of today, I am putting together a comprehensive reform package that will be ready in the new year. It would include strengthening the European parliaments with whistleblower protection systems, a ban on all unofficial friendship groups, a review of the monitoring of our code of conduct rules, and a complete and in-depth review of how we interact with third countries.
European Union leaders have gathered on Thursday in Brussels for their year-end summit, overshadowed by political distractions in Europe, ranging from the conflict in Ukraine to a bribery scandal. The meeting takes place amid increasing challenges for the 27-nation bloc. The European Union seeks to expand trade and investment with much of the world, especially emerging economies. This year, the conflict in Ukraine has added up against the European economy and has put the bloc at risk of recession. The disruption of the Russian energy supplies has affected financial markets and triggered inflation, pushing up the cost of goods from groceries to heating. We're taking one last short break now. Join us again after this, and also don't forget to follow me on my Twitter account at teleSUR for more news. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. The governments of Greece, Spain, and Italy have each reported losing at least 1 billion euros in revenue due to a sharp reduction of Russian tourists. The statement was made by the vice president of Russia's Tourism Industry Association, Yuri Barsikin. Barsikin said that about 30% of Russian tourists decided for other destinations abroad, while 20% chose to visit domestic regions. In September, the then head of the Russian Federal Tourism Agency said that the flow of tourists from Russia to Europe would be 15 times lower by the end of 2022 and that it would have been in 2019 before the COVID-19 pandemic. 4 migrants died after a boat got into difficulties and capsized in the English Channel. Authorities confirmed that information after a major search and rescue operation was launched early on Thursday. The United Kingdom's Southeast Coast Ambulance Service sent resources to Dover, England, after receiving a call regarding the incident. British Home Secretary Suella Braverman declined to comment on the number of people in the boat and the number of rescued in the UK. Joint France operation, which involved resources from the UK's Royal National Lifeboat Institution, the British Royal Navy, Border Force, the French Navy, and Kent Police. And in India, at least 31 people have died and 20 others have been hospitalized in serious conditions after allegedly drinking tainted liquor sold without authorization. Police officers confirmed several of the 20 hospitalized have lost their eyesight. The victims belonged to 3 villages in Bihar state, where the manufacturing, sale, and consumption of liquor is prohibited. Such bans are enforced in several Indian states, driving a thriving black market for cheap alcohol made in unregulated distilleries that kill hundreds of people yearly. The sale and consumption of liquor was prohibited in Bihar state in 2016 after women's groups campaigned against poor workers spending their low incomes on drinking. The deaths were reported in a government-run hospital where their families brought the sick for treatment. And Lebanon's divided parliament failed to elect a new president for a 10th time, despite the damage the political deadlock is doing to efforts to bail out its bankrupt economy. Parliament is currently split between supporters of the Hezbollah movement and its opponents, neither of whom have a clear majority. Hezbollah opponent Michel Mawad, son of former President René Mawad, won the support of 38 members of parliament, but once again fell well short of the required majority. Only 190 out of the parliament's 128 lawmakers showed up for the vote. Furthermore, 37 blank votes were casted and 8 members of parliament voted his prominent historian and academic Issam Kafeli. And in the Democratic Republic of Congo, over 140 people died in the capital, Kinshasa, due to past Tuesday's flash flooding and mudslides. At least 12 people are still reported missing, and there are dozens injured. Local authorities said that some 12 million people live in the 24 neighborhoods of Kinshasa that were hit by floods and landslides. Nearly 40,000 houses were flooded and close to 300 were flattened. Furthermore, at least one main road into the capital was cut off, and a large portion of the city is still submerged in water. Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi, who's currently in the U.S. attending the U.S.-Africa Summit, expressed his sorrow and called on local authorities to speed up recovery efforts, and he also instructed government officials to provide assistance to grieving families. 3 days of mourning were announced starting this past Wednesday. A week after China eased some of its COVID-19 containment measures, uncertainty remained on Thursday over the direction of the pandemic. So far, Beijing has more than tripled the number of fever clinics to over 300. Though most of China's population is vaccinated, millions of older adults haven't had a booster shot of the country's domestically made vaccines. Studies show that vaccines are effective in preventing hospitalization and death, but require at least three doses in order to be fully effective. Recently, the government said that it would offer a fourth shot to these vulnerable groups. And just as the hearts of millions of fans live the emotions of the Qatar 2022 World Cup, teleSUR joins the sporting event with From the Field, a show that brings news, analysis, reviews, and more to our audience. Don't miss it. Our show airs at 1 p.m. local time Caracas, 12 p.m. New York. Remember, From the Field, only on teleSUR. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on our social media accounts. We're on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For Telesur English, I am Stefania Bravo. Until next time.